So good morning, everyone. I hope I am now on live. Can't see who there is, but I hope you can see me and you can hear me. My name is Angela Ashwin. I live in southwest England, and yeah, I'm living yoga since a long time. I've come across yoga more than 40 years ago. I've practiced yoga for 40 years. I've taught yoga so far for 30 years, and for 20 years I've trained yoga teachers. And in the last 5 years, I have put quite a lot of effort into learning Sanskrit, because my main interest in the yoga is really the Indian heritage, the Sanskrit background. And without knowing the language, I felt I'm not getting very far. I've always studied the Shrutis, the Indian heritage, but in English translations. Since quite a long time, at least 15 years, if not more, I have been suspicious about what we are taught about pranayama. Practices like the complete 3-stage yoga breath, where you fill your lungs up with air, you're using your respiratory system, you're breathing in, you're holding your breath. From my practice point of view, I thought that can't be right. That is really not going along with the whole spirit of yoga. So I started to look into the text, first the English translations. And I did find, in particular the Hatha text, I did find quite a lot of statements in the English translation saying, breathe in and do this or that, which went totally against the grain. One verse in particular made me really think something is not quite right, and it is the verse in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika about the practice of Shakti Kalani, where you're instructed to draw your belly all the way in, like in Udana Bandha, and when it's all the way in, then you turn your belly. The English translation says, breathe in and draw your belly in. Now that is absolutely impossible. You can't, with full lungs, go into Udana Bandha, draw the belly in. And it needs to be done with empty lungs and after the exhalation. So what is going wrong? I looked at transliterated Sanskrit texts and found that the Sanskrit in these instructions is draw prana in and then pull the belly up. Now, draw prana in is actually something entirely different than breathe in. Prana is a movement in the body. The way I felt it in my practice, and I will show you that in my talk, is prana is moving from the navel center outwards and then it draws back in. And the moment when it draws back in, then exhalation is happening. And if you turn this around, suddenly all these statements make sense. So at that point, I was quite unsure about what I thought, and thought there are only two options now. Either I go really fully into learning the language, or I just stay with my suspicion about this. And I did learn the language, 5 years now. That opened a new world for me. Suddenly I could understand directly all that Indian heritage, all these Shrutis, a beautiful experience, and I felt very much my suspicion confirmed. I started teaching this approach of trying to use pranayama as a different method, and gave teaching days. At the beginning, I was unsure, and always asked the students after a teaching day, "What do you think? Do you think there's something true about what I've came up?" And the response was always, "Suddenly you did show us in practice and in theory that your approach is right." And it was somehow twisted in the way it came to the West. That's when I started to write it more up, and the book appeared, my book Pranayama, Lost in Translation, which is launched in the next few days. Just one more word before I start with the talk. Doing pranayama doesn't mean you don't move anymore. Pranayama is not an extra practice where you just sit and then at another time you do your asana practice. Pranayama is a movement that happens 24 hours a day. You do it whatever you do. And more I felt in the asana practice, the pranayama is actually essential and crucial to make the asana practice effective. I feel more and more that the practice of asana is more to show us where our blockages in the pranic body are, And then we see it. And then we need the pranayama to remove them. Good. I hope you can see the document I am sharing here. This is a document which I have electronically. I have put the details which are here on the top in the chat, or you can take a screenshot. There's my email address. If you want any more information, I always answer my email at my website. And if you're interested in the book, how to get the book. If you feel this document is useful, you would like it, just email me and I send you then the document electronically. Good. So there's an image of the cover of the book, Pranayama Lost in Translation. And yeah, it's about pranayama. Prana. Prana means life. Ayama. Ayama means expansion. And that is a practice which is mentioned in the fourth limbs in Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and it is one of the major focuses in the Hatha Yoga. It was around through the Indian history, pranayama, and it is mentioned in a lot of the texts. Hatha Yoga was particular, the tradition which made it a main focus. So when the yoga came into the West, the word prana was incorrectly translated with the English term breath, and pranayama was translated with breathing practice. And this is when pranayama got lost in translation. Prana is not breath. Prana is not energy either. Prana is life. If we look at a dead body, if we look at a life body, the difference between those is one has life, the other one has no life. That is prana. Prana, which is an element, a substance really, which is within any living being as long as the living being is alive. Prana is not something which is out there. Prana is not something which we breathe in. Prana is not something which we need to replenish. It's not energy which we need to recharge, which it is within all the time we live. I give you here a few quotes to show that. The first is from Swami Nishalananda Saraswati, a student of Swami Satchidananda Saraswati. In his book Prana, Pranayama and Prana Vidya, he says at the beginning of a life, one thing I need to say, prana as it moves within us, moves like a wind. And that movement is referred to with the word Vayu. Vayu means wind. Because the quote is using the word Vayu and not prana. Vayu is the movement of prana. At the beginning of a life, the constant motion, Vayu, commences as soon as we are conceived in our mother's womb. So that is when life comes in, prana comes into it. That is when life starts. I have a question mark here. The question mark refers to the moment of conception. There are other sources which speak at the moment of birth. Seems a bit too early, moment conception, birth a bit too late. A baby in an 8 months pregnant woman is certainly alive already. We look later at it when this moment could really be, when prana enters a being. So prana enters, it makes us evolve, grow, and eventually it retreats and death occurs. And there is a quote from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika 2.3, where it says, life is said to exist only so long as there is Vayu, the movement of prana, in the body. Its departure is death. And that confirms that really. Prana is not something we breathe in and we need more of. Prana comes into a creature, makes it alive. When it goes, we are dead. And the time between birth or conception and death is the time of life where prana is within us. So, what is life? The West hasn't got much concept of what life really is, because it cannot be seen, it cannot be touched, it cannot be thought, but it unquestionably is. The West acknowledges the existence of realities that can be seen, touched, and thought. So life is not a reality to reflect on. We don't talk about a substance of life which is within us or is not within us. The West defines death as that state where the physical body ceases functioning. But why does the physical body cease functioning? Because the element of life, prana, is retreating. There's a nice description in the Prana Upanishad about that process of death when prana gradually retreats and moves up into the ground center and eventually out of the body, retreats from the physical functions. First, prana shifts out of the sense organs. Then we can't see, we can't hear anymore, out of the other organs, and the physical body starts or stops or ceases to function. And then prana entirely leaves, and that is death. So prana is that substance which gives us life. So that substance, life, is within us. It is a part of our being as we are in that carnation in this world. Only a part of that. The old teaching of the koshas, first we see that in the Taittiriya Upanishad, is enlightening us quite a lot of it to show where is this, how do we understand that pranic force to be. So we are not considered and not seen as one physical body. Our bodily being has 5 layers. Kosha means layer or sheath. And these 5 panchakosha, 5 layers, is that teaching. And that there's a picture here of them, which shows us the 5 different layers. This is our physical being. As long as this is upheld, our consciousness is upholding it, and when that falls apart, prana goes, consciousness leaves, then we are dead. So here we are. The first layer is Annamaya kosha. Anna means food. Maya is a suffix which means made out of. Kosha is the layer. The kosha, the sheet, the layer that is made out of food. That's quite a lovely image. That's our physical body. That's all made out of food. The Annamaya kosha is very little discussed in Indian scriptures, in Indian heritage. So that was not much of interest. In the West, that's the only one we talk about. And everything we try to describe, this is our anatomical body, and we try to explain everything from that point of view. The yogis weren't interested very much in that. The second layer is now here, the Pranamaya kosha. The layer made out of prana, made out of life. That's what interests us here now with pranayama. That's obviously the place pranayama takes place. A body made out, a sheath made out of prana. Further, subtler is the manomaya kosha. Manas is mind, the body made out of mind, our thought processes and our memories and our ideas, all these make up a new layer. Then comes the Vijnanamaya kosha, the layer that is made out of insight, wisdom, that inert in us what we always knew, and that can be uncovered when the other layers become more transparent. And right at the core sits the Anandamaya kosha, the body of bliss. That's our inner happiness when we are making the other layers transparent. And we'll see that pranayama is the process of making the prana maya kosha transparent. Raja yoga is the practice of making the manomaya kosha, the mind, transparent. Then we can get into our wisdom and into our bliss. So we are interested now here in the second layer, the pranic body, or the pranamaya kosha. Life is a substance that penetrates a being. It shifts and moves in and forms the pranic body, and that is the pranamaya kosha. And if you look into the other texts, we see only terminology referring to the pranamaya kosha, not to the annamaya kosha, the anatomical body. So the pranic body is established when prana is entering the navel center, Manipura. at the time of conception, birth, forming of the umbilical cord. There's my question mark again. And the question, I thought quite a bit about it, thinking, when is this prana coming in? Conception is a bit too early when there are just two cells. Birth is definitely too late because there is definitely life already. It comes then in when some into the navel center, just behind the navel, into Manipura, this chakra, which is the storehouse, the home for all prana, when it enters in there. So what is there at the navel center? That's the place the umbilical cord joins into the fetus. About the umbilical cord forms in the placenta, and about week 7 of pregnancy, the umbilical cord is now joining to the fetus, and I believe that at this moment prana is entering. I got confirmed. My idea got confirmed by looking at the Buddhist teaching when they say that consciousness arrives in the body at the day 49 of pregnancy, which is exactly 7 weeks. Prana is the link which keeps consciousness in the body. It's an alive being, and then it can become conscious. And also Rudolf Steiner is talking about the importance of the 7th week of pregnancy, where the etheric body is forming. So whether right or not, I believe that might be the moment, because it is behind the navel. That is where the prana sits, and as soon as through the mother's, through the umbilical cord, prana can enter. And from here, from that place, from that navel center, from here it moves, prana, and it moves in the form of Vayus. Some of the Vayus move in the rhythm of the breath, and this is where we got lost in translation. The Vayus move in the rhythm of the breath. They are substantially different from the breath. Just if one thing happens in a specific rhythm doesn't mean something else cannot also happen at that specific rhythm. They are linked through the rhythm of the breath, prana and breath, or respiration, let's rather say, but they are substantially different. So, first I describe the first four Vayus. The Vayus are movements within the Prana Maya kosha, and most traditions speak about 5 Vayus. I'll speak about 5 here as well, but first the first 4. These 4 Vayus, here is a diagram. In the middle is the navel center. From the middle of the pranic body, the navel center, in the rhythm of the breath, the Vayu, the movement of the prana, moves. If it moves downwards, then it's called Apana. If it moves sideways, then it's called Samana. If it moves chest upwards, then it's called Prana. And if it moves into the whole of the bodily space, out into the extremities, then it's called Udana. And those 4 movements, up, side, down, outwards, they are moving in the rhythm of the breath, but they are not the same. I like to use an analogy here to show that something can happen at the same rhythm and be substantially different. The analogy of an orchestra. There is the conductor waving the arms, and the waving of the arms of the conductor gives the rhythm. And that rhythm is quite different from anything else that takes place, but that rhythm keeps it all together. Along to the waving of the arms of the conductor play the violins. Let's say the violins are the respiration. Different people, different instruments, they have a totally different part to play, might be very different than anyone else. And along the same rhythm of the waving of the hands of the conductor play the clarinets. Let's say this is the Vayu movement. Substantially different from respiration. Different people, different instruments, different parts. They play something totally different. But they're linked. They're linked in harmony by that same rhythm. And I found this analogy that helps quite a lot to try to understand how respiration and Vayu movement, that movement of prana, is linked together without it being the same. They are substantially different. So what I would like now to do is give you a little practical insight, sitting a bit closing your eyes, focusing on that movement within I talk you through, with the hope that you experience that this rhythm we call breath has quite different activities created. So if you like to make yourself comfortable, sit somewhere upright, close your eyes, and the first we do is focus on our respiration. So you're feeling as you breathe in, you're feeling air from the outside flowing through your nostrils into the lungs. The diaphragm contracts, and the abdomen will be squashed. As the diaphragm contracts, it moves down, it squashes the abdomen, and that squashing could happen that the abdominal wall moves forwards. And then there's the exhalation, and that air is expelled again out of the lungs, out of the nostrils, back to the outside. That exhalation starts quite strong, and then it peters out. It's like opening the valve of a dinghy. So if we open it, there's a lot of air in the lungs, and then we open the valve, and then gets gradually less. So if you just see whether you can focus on that movement a bit. Through the nostril into the lungs, abdomen contracts, out goes the air, first strong, then petering out. This movement takes place between the outside and the inside, between outside nostrils, chest region up to the diaphragm, and up low. So now let's settle your awareness into the mid-abdomen, into the navel center, to see what we're actually feeling there. To start with, just allow a few breaths. There's an in-breath, and as you breathe out, imagine your whole center of awareness, which is mostly sitting in the head, is with the out-breath dropping down into the navel center, into the mid-abdomen. You will find a clear point where you know, that's the place where I can settle my awareness. Just a few breaths, out breaths, settle in the navel center. You want to experience from here now. So once being there, what you can feel is there is, from this navel center, an expanding outwards. And that expanding outwards can go down towards the pelvic region. We're not talking about the pelvis, we are talking about a layer which hasn't got anatomical forms. You can feel an expanding into the sides, you can feel an expanding up to the chest. Maybe not as far out as the Udana would go. This is the Vayu movement. Expands out, and then it draws back in again. Goes home, back into its origin, its inner home, the navel center, Manipura chakra. Out it expands downwards, sideways, upwards. At a certain time it turns around and moves back in again. Now just notice the expanding outwards happens at the same time, in the same rhythm as the inhalation. You don't need to focus on the respiration at all anymore. Eventually you just feel that Vayu movement. That moving, drawing inwards again, the in movement happens during the exhalation. Vayu and respiration move in opposite directions. But just focus on the Vayu. If you forget that you breathe, if you are coming to a point where you don't know anymore, where there's in-breath and out-breath, then your focus on the Vayu is actually really good. Just sense now that this drawing inwards, that coming back into Manipura, is, unlike exhalation, is getting stronger and not petering out. It is actively, something deep in the mid-abdomen is actively drawing it in. We might not be able to allow it to be drawn fully in. We'll see later why. But that movement is actually getting stronger and not petering out. So we'll now ask you to go into a practice, which is not a pranayama practice, but a practice that enables prana, a practice that enables the perception of that subtle texture of prana, and that is the practice of Kapalabhati. We're going through a round of Kapalabhati and then just see whether this whole sense of there is a subtle element that moves from the navel center out and back can become stronger. So Kapalabhati, those of you who have done yoga before know that. I'm sure you will, as you blow the air out of the nose, but you don't think about it, you will draw the belly in. Just tilt my screen a bit. If you have a hand on the belly, you blow the air out and the belly comes in. And then you let the belly pop forwards again. You can do it at whatever speed you like. I will not go through the practice now because I don't know whether how it is on that system in Zoom. The sound is then distorted if I do that. But I just get you to do this, and we'll say at one point, now do your last. Draw the belly in, and then don't breathe. So let's get started. Belly in, let go, in, let go, in, let go, as the breath moves. Do a few more. When you do your last one, the drawing in, do a really intense one. And then stay there. And don't do anything. And there will be a moment of nothing, stillness. And then again, you don't do anything. And after a while, the movement is starting to begin again, the movement of the Vayu. An expansion from the navel center outward and a drawing back. And now really focus on that subtle element that is moving. It's not air. Something quite perceptible, something very subtle. A subtle texture, but it is a substance that moves out, that moves back in. With practice, you will notice that movement out could carry on for a long time, much longer than your physical breath. The movement back in can take place for long and long and long, much longer than your physical breath. And it has nothing to do with your physical breath. So now, switch, go back to perceive your respiration. Breathe in, feel air from the outside moving through your nostrils, filling the lungs. And then it flows back out again through the nostrils into the outside. And I hope a few breaths is enough. And I hope you can start to perceive that there are two entirely different movements that happen to move in the rhythm of the breath. That substance of prana moving from the navel center is very different from the air moving in and out of the body. The prana movement and the airflow, they move in opposite directions. When the air flows in, the Vayu moves out. When the Vayu moves in, the air flows out. So I hope you could experience that difference of respiration and prana movement a bit. So let's move to the next point, that prana can move in different forms. Prana is the moving substance in this prana maya kosha, establishing the prana maya kosha, and it comes in 6 different forms. The first 4 forms are the 4 Vayus, which, in this image, which I have described before, Apana, Samana, Prana, Udana. And they move in the rhythm of the breath. The other 2 forms of prana are independent from the breath. The 5th Vayu is called Vyana, and that is moving on its own accord, and it's moving wherever space it is made, wherever space it made. It is like sun shining into all the places where shades are removed. I remember having quite a long time struggling with this kind of Vayu. What is this Vyana? It's always said Vyana is just, the prana is in the pelvis region, prana is in the chest, and Udana in the legs and head and arm, and Vyana is everywhere. What does this mean? It's actually that what most people who are practicing pranayama, practicing yoga, can very, very clearly experience, and that's often why we do why we do yoga. When we are opening, unblocking, clearing our pranic body, then there is this element of Vyana, not in the rhythm of the breath, which seems to move now into there. So what I would like you to do now, I tilt my screen just a little bit and only on one side of the body. I like you, while you focus on the pranic movement, to go into a few asana-like practices only on one side. And then we see what happens. These asana practices show us where the blocking is. Through the movement of the prana, we can undo them a bit. And you might feel then afterwards that there is really something happening, something moving, independent from the breath. So I hope you still can hear me well. I will lie down. Good. We are practicing only on the right side of the body. You're lying down, bringing your right leg up, have a tie a belt or even a hand, hold on to the right foot, head down, and start to apply your pranayama movement. From the mid-abdomen, you expand your awareness into pelvis, into that leg area. Don't think about leg, don't think about muscles. Don't think about a restriction of the physical body. Just feel you move out into that plane, and then you retreat back into the navel center. As you retreat back, drop your pelvis. Rise from the foot, particularly from the root of the big toe and the inner heel. In the rhythm of the Vayu movement, Vayu down into the pelvis, towards the leg. It retreats back into the navel center. Pelvis locks, the pelvis drops, the foot rises. Make space. And then as you are there, just drop this right leg straight to the right side. Don't bend your elbow if you're holding onto a tie or holding onto the foot. Don't bend your knee. The foot will not come all the way on the floor. It just goes down. Leave the left leg as good as possible on the floor. And now you feel there's a restriction lower on the area of the inside of the leg. And you send your Vayu movement, Apana, Udana, down into that restricted area. Try just to feel the sensation of the restriction. And then bring it back into the navel center. Drop the leg, drop the pelvis, and rise the foot out. from the leg being out of the side, bend the knee. Bring the heel closer to your navel. Have both hands on your ankle and see how far you can bring that foot direction navel, the heel to the navel, or even further to the chest. Keep your left leg still, keep your head on the floor, and send your Vayu movement out into this right side below the navel center. More and more we try to get away from the sensation of my physical body, but just feel this Vayu can't move. There is something there, some shades there. The light can't shine everywhere. And bring it back. And then let's go into one more movement. The knee stays bent. You place your right foot on the left knee. You have your right arm out on the side to the right. And then as you are bringing the Vayu back into the middle of the abdomen, you're drawing this right knee to the left on the floor, but keeping the right arm out. Now you can feel restrictions not just in the area right below the navel center, but up direction chest. Allow the Vayu movement to move there and draw it back out. See that there is something that prevents this movement. There's some shades. And if we, with that Vayu movement, move the shades a bit, maybe light can shine into places it hasn't before. So now, bring this leg back, line Shavasana, just lie flat on the back on the floor, and keep your eyes closed, and just perceive. Something is gradually happening. Some of you might very much know this feeling. We've worked on the right side of the body, and in the right side of the body, an aliveness is starting to expand, not in the left side. We have moved some shades away. Light can shine. A substance moving through that place that makes us more alive, feel less solid, feeling unsubstantial. A subtle element is seeping through that space. That is Vyana. So I hope you could feel that. I'm not talking you now through the left side, because we haven't got the time for it. But if we would do this in a normal yoga class, we certainly have to do the left side. If you can come up and sit back and look at the shared screen. That was Vyana, the fifth form of prana moving through the body. There's a sixth form, which we're not practicing or doing much about it. Now there's no time. The sixth form is this famous Kundalini. Kundalini is a dormant force. This is rooted in Muladhara chakra, not in Manipura chakra. And it's a dormant force there. When it awakes, it moves into the middle, into the deepest core of the pranic body, Shushumna it's called. That happens in a stillness, when a space called Kumbhaka occurs. And that comes to be when the pranic kosha is purified. You felt now hopefully some of the shades, some of the impurities in there, and that is what we are looking at now. The Kundalini is then starting to become away when we are in an advanced state of practice of purification of the pranic body, and that's what the Pranayama is about. Question: why do the Vayus move? The Vayus move in order to purify the pranic body. That is the purpose of Pranayama, not to get a capacity enlarged, not to get a respiratory system, respiratory health improved, to purify the pranic body. I give you here now a verse which I find is probably one of the most important verses concerning pranayama. That's in the Hatha Yoga Pranipika. I haven't said it's the chapter 4 verse, the chapter 2 verse 4. So the verse says, Malakulasa narisu marutu naiva niyaga katam sva unmani bahava karyusidihi katam bahavat. So what does this mean? When malakulasa are in the nadis, so the nadis are the places in the pranic body where the Vayus moves through, subtle conductors of prana conductors, basically. And in these nadis, in the places where the Vayu moves, there are now clinging obstacles. The word mala means obstacle. It's something which is situated here in the pranic body, a clinging, a holding, an attaching, a not letting go. That is sitting in our pranic body. I hope you felt it a bit, like these shades. The Vayus can't expand all the way, they can't go all the way. Something is sitting there, and that something is kulasa, clinging. The mala is clinging, the mala is kulasa. They cling in there. So when the malakulasa are in the nadis, then marut is a synonym to Vayu, exactly the same. Marut does not go into the middle, and the middle is the Sushumna nadi. We can't get fully into the core of ourselves. How can there be unmani, a still mind? How can siddhis occur? So, a few things does this verse tell us. There are obstacles situated in the pranic body. What is their nature? The obstacles are not toxins or anything. The obstacles are attachments, clinging. There's our ego stuff that sits in this pranic body. They don't sit in the mind, they don't sit in the physical body, they sit in the pranic body, but they create the mind to react, they create the body to tense up. They situate it there in all the nadis. They prevent the prana from fully expanding, reversing, and entering Sushumna. That free flow isn't there. All the prana we need is within us. We don't need more, but we need to make space for it to move. And when they are removed, then an enlightened state occurs. So the process of removing, that's pranayama. The aim of pranayama is to reach the enlightened state. And to show the link that the process of that this purification is the process of pranayama is said in 2 verses further, where it says, Pranayamam tattad kuryam nityam satvikaya diya atashishumna nadista mala shudhim prayanti cha. Therefore, do pranayama always with a sattvic, an illuminated mind, so that the malas, the impurities in the Sushumna nadi, attain purity. So that is what pranayama is about. Do pranayama because pranayama does purify your pranic body, and the result is an enlightened state. Pranayama is the method to purify the nadis, the pranic body. So the Vayus move until purification is achieved. Then they will stop and a new phase occurs. So just one last point now here, which shows really what the definition of pranayama is. What is pranayama? According to the old text, pranayama is not a row of practices, Ujjayi, Brahmari, and Bhastrika, Kapalabhati, and Udana, and whatever. That is described, but not under the name pranayama. Pranayama is clearly only a movement of 3 elements. And that is the definition in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Pranayama stida prakto recha puraka kumbaka hi sahita kevala shchiti kumbako di dvivido mata. Definition of pranayama. Pranayama is said to have 3 elements. Pranayama is the movement in 3 elements. Rechaka, expanding out. Puraka, filling in. Kumbaka, literally meaning pot. Here it's referred to the pause after the time when exhalation is finished. You might very much have learned, I have learned, that breathing has 4 phases. We have, first we have Puraka, which is in-breath. Puraka is not in-breath. Puraka is filling in. Then we would have Antara Kumbhaka, which is a pause after the in-breath. Then we would have Rechaka, which is the out-breath. Then we have Bahya Kumbhaka. There are 4, and they are relating to breath. This is all made up. Nowhere in the Sanskrit literature is anything like this. 3 elements. Rechaka is not breathing out, but expanding out during the in-breath. Puraka is not breathing in, but drawing the prana inwards during the exhalation. 1 pause after that exhalation, not 2. It says here that Kumbhaka is believed to be 2-fold, but they're both after that exhalation. Sahita, the incomplete, and Kevala only. When we are getting the pranic system more purified, you will feel more and more that after a complete reverse of the prana, there is a pause. You can't stay there forever. Then the expanding happens again. That is Sahita Kumbhaka, when we are not able to remain there. When Sahita, and that is the next verse describes it, when we are not able to remain there, then you practice Sahita. You go there, come out again. You go there, come out again. When we are really more advanced, then it might be possible that we are reaching the pranic forces in, and then we only have Kumbhaka. We stay there and don't breathe anymore. So the aim of pranayama is not to fill the lungs up, increase the lung capacity, but to stop breathing. We were coming to the end of the time. I just show you one more verse just to show you that this is not made up in one text only. 1,500 years earlier, in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, pranayama is described as defined as well, exactly in the same way. Bahya Abhya Antara Stamba Fritidesha Kala Samkhya Bhi Paridrishtu Dirga Suksham. Meaning, the pranayama movement is of 3-fold: outwards, inwards, suspended. And those movements are need to be learned to control in the right place now, but we don't go into that. They're either long or short, exactly the same. An outwards movement, an inwards movement, and that pause. 3 phases, and the third, the still pause, is after the pranic forces has moved in. The terminology of Bahya and Antara turns up here in Patanjali, but Bahya doesn't mean the pause. Bahya means the outwards move, Antara the inwards move, and there's nowhere in the texts a connection of the word Bahya with Kumbhaka or Antara with Kumbhaka, and there is not such a thing as Antara Kumbhaka. So far that I hope you got a bit of this. I have stopped sharing that document, and you're very welcome now to. I go into, there is a chat. I don't know. I enable some questions. No question below. So if you, I hope I have enabled that now. If you are wanting to ask a question, give a statement, then see whether you can get into this question box. I haven't got anything here in the moment. Oops, there was just something popping up and now it's got no question yet. Maybe I do this wrong. Because I've been told I should enable that now. I haven't enabled anything. There have been a few comments about Ah, there's something now. Okay. So it seems to work. Good. What we tried to do now is to see. There's yeah, there is okay, there is someone, Larissa, saying, thank you for the session. I missed the first half. I'm hoping I can get a recording of the session. It is recorded. I'm sure you can get that. Leia, hello, you are there. I'm just wondering what happens to prana after death. Does it literally diminish or nothing? Into nothing, or does it transform? Prana is an element which is never ever diminishing or not existing. Prana is in the mythology. The whole world is basically described as a merge of pranic forces with conscious sources. There is Shiva, consciousness. There is Shakti, the pranic force. And the marriage, the holy marriage of Shiva and Shakti create, the coming together of consciousness and prana, creates life on this planet that is never diminishing, that goes out of this body. That body is decaying. Prana joins the universal prana. And the consciousness within, which is not the prana holds the consciousness within, is released and moving somewhere, might be reincarnating again, might be to another place. Nothing is ever getting lost, not consciousness, not prana, and the whole matter form is basically prana in any way. It transforms, it moves back into the Shakti power, the universal prana around us. I hope that makes a bit sense. Prana is not consciousness. Prana is that which keeps consciousness in that bodily form, in that alive form, and when prana leaves, with that consciousness leaves, and prana is moving into other places. So thanks for that question, Leia. And let's see whether anyone has others. I hope you felt, or let me know, that these practices did show you a little bit the difference of prana. Here there is someone, Tobias Richter. At a point I felt no need for breath after Kapalabhati. What was it that I experienced? That was Sahita Kumbhaka. And that is exactly that what happens when you start to purify the nadi system. Then there is no need for breath. And it is not that you hold breath. You're coming into this beautiful place of stillness. That is the place where the Kundalini force is starting to awaken, and then it can move up. That moves up in that space. This is the Kumbhaka. It is the Sahita Kumbhaka because you will be out now. Obviously, you will have breathed again. If you would go into the Kevala Kumbhaka, you could stay there for hours. So I hope that makes sense. You have reached a place where there was not so much need of the Vayu movement. The Vayu movement is there to purify the nadis. You have reached a certain purification, and that is a beautiful place where you can then just say, and eventually it will get more. So Larissa, Angela, many modern breathwork practices focus on controlling the breath, but you said pranayama isn't about breath. How can someone start to shift from working with the breath to working with the pranic body? Straight away, you don't need to prepare for this. The first session, I don't know, Larissa, whether you were there already, when I tried to instruct you into feel the respiration, which is taking place at the same time as the Vayu movement, but then bring your focus into the navel center. Feel the movement there. You will feel it pretty soon. What I do not do, and I don't believe, I mean, I have been taught in the British Wheel for long, and they have the approach saying we need to do basic breathing long before we do pranayama because the people need to get used to it. I don't believe this anymore. When people come to me the first time they practice pranayama and they experience it the first time, you just need to get your mind in a different place, away from breathing into the navel center. And then the trick is basically trying to recognize when you are focusing on that Vayu movement, something moving downwards, upwards, sideways, you are visualizing the physical body. Try to get away from the vision. Just feel the move. The best place to start is Apana, the movement of the Vayu from the navel center downwards, because you have no respiratory system there. If you try to practice prana and get up into the chest, then you might end up with thoracic breathing. Start with Apana. Just feel down into the pelvis in the lightness and back out again. And gradually apply it in the asana practice and see whether you can get it there together. But just, it's a matter of focus, much more than doing all these practices like Kapalabhati and Brahmari and all these. They are facilitating the sense of pranayama. Do them. I love doing the Agnisari, the movement of the belly without the breath, the Kapalabhati, or the Brahmari, all that, but in order as a starting practice, so that you can start to feel them. There is something subtle shifting. And as I said before, when you come to the place where you only you feel that movement expand from the abdomen, down, side, up, and back, and then you get confused, and then you think, was this now the in-breath or was this the out-breath? I don't know anymore. Then you know you've got it. Because then you have really felt something independent. Leave the respiration behind. Don't even think about it. Just focus on that movement. The Hatha yoga works in the pranic body, not in the physical body. So there is something else for those of us teaching or practicing daily. What are some simple ways to stay connected to the pranic body in everyday life, both on and off mat? Off mat, focus. Be aware and be aware. At the beginning of the first practice, I ask you to drop the center of awareness down into the belly. Do that. Get the sense of experiencing. You go for a walk, you wait for a bus, you wait for the kettle to boil, you experience the movement from the belly. And on mat, great things are, start with one of those pranayama facilitating practices like Kapalabhati. Agnisari is the same as Kapalabhati without the breath. You breathe in, you breathe out, and then let the belly move. And then you breathe in again. That is easier to start with, and then you can apply the Kapalabhati. Brahmari is a wonderful one, the humming, to elongate this pranic reverse, but just focus on the prana movement. And then you can apply it in the asana movement like we did before. See whether you can feel in the asana, not my hamstrings are tight, but I bring my Vayu into a clinging area. What do you feel? So you stretch your legs, hamstrings are tight. Yes, in the physical body. But why are they tight? There is some sort of clinging behind it. If you're now really focusing, closing your eyes, focusing, I can move my life force into that clinging, that beyond. Why is the hamstring tight? In the pranic body sits the malakulasa, the tightening, the clinging, the attachment. And I can start to loosen that. So do the whole asana practice then more and more with focusing on that move. As I said right at the beginning, I do believe that the whole purpose of asana is not to get flexibility and stretch your muscles, is to show us where the obstructions sit. I sit like this, and I have no idea that here in that area of my layers, my 5-layered body, is an obstruction. Now, if I go into an asana, then I see, oh gosh, yes, there is something. Now I know where to work. That is what I believe the main purpose of asana is. I see where the obstruction, this malakulasa sits, and I can shift it. I hope that helps. There's another one. How do substances like wine and meat affect the flow of prana, the functioning of nadis, or the subtle states required for inner awakening? Yes, that is a nice question. If you look at the Tantra tradition, they say you should do that all. You should get all the substances in there in order to create a conflict, and then you see where the conflict is and you can loosen them. You certainly refine, definitely, your inner focus if you stay away from these more rajasic foods and or tamasic substances. Then your whole inner awareness gets clearer. I don't believe in dogmatism. I don't believe someone needs to be absolutely strictly on I never do, I never, because that gives you a mental knot. See how you get on with it. If you consume something like that, does it change me? Does it not? Generally, your awareness will be clearer, and you might be able to reduce it over the time. In the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, at the end of the first chapter, there's a whole list of suggested foods you can eat, but don't be dogmatic about it, because the dogmaticness blocks your mind then. So, Tobias Richter, you mentioned sattvic mind helps in enhancing prana. How does the sattvic matter and the how does the sattvic matter and pranic interact? The sattvic I mentioned in the verse Hatha Yoga Pradipika 2.6, where it says that pranayama is that method. Pranayama is that what purifies the nadis. Sattvic mind is basically when the mind is clear, when the mind is not obstructed by lots of thought process. And then we come into a different and a nice link that is basically a mind control place, Raja Yoga. Several times in most Hatha texts there is a reference to Raja Yoga, and they always says that they need to be done together. The first verse in the whole of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika says that Hatha Yoga needs to be done as a stairway to Raja Yoga. We need to purify the pranic body, but we need the pure mind, and that's the sattvic mind. The sattvic pranic body as well, the sattvic, the illuminated, the clearness in the mind. That is needed to really follow and lead. If you're just trying to do pranayama and do some sort of breathing here or there or whatever, and your mind is not with that, it's not going to work. That focus, that absolutely clarity of the sattvicness is needed it's very much needed for that. I hope that makes sense. It's a whole different subject, the gunas, the sattva, the tamas, and the raja apply to absolutely everything. And in the Bhagavad Gita, the last 3 chapters, they describe beautifully that these gunas, how to increase sattvic and reduce tamasic and rajasic, how to do it in any sort of life situation. That might be worthwhile looking at it. Good. Just have a think if there's any other questions you want to ask. I find it very odd to not know who is there, really. I've recognized a few names here, but like Leia. But I hope it came across. So we are after 11 o'clock now. I hope that you got some food for thought, but it isn't about thinking. It's a practice. And if we want to do pranayama, it's not that we just need to know how to do it and we do it. We get some instructions and we get them from the scriptures, and then we need to practice, and gradually with the practice, eventually more and more insight happens. The insight happens really through the practice. Take a verse, like one of the verses I gave you today. Take one and practice it. Practice it for months, practice it for years. That does it. Not the knowing about it. I do often like to compare the practice of yoga with learning an instrument. if someone tells you, here is your keyboard, there are all these keys, they're having that name, and there's a piece of paper in front of you, and that dot here refers to that key here. So you know it now. Do it. Play. You can't possibly play. Someone tells you how it works, and then you need to practice, and practice, and practice, and practice. And that's the same with yoga. You need the texts. You need to be a scholar. You need to go and see where that is. But the main thing, practice, practice, and practice. And things will unfold on their own. Good. Yeah, thank you very much for joining. It is recorded. I will find out how to get how you will probably automatically get the recording, and I will find out myself how to get the recording. And there is one more thing in the chat I see. Okay, yeah, thank you to Tobias. Oh, there's another question. Yeah. Good. Thank you, Leila. I will speak to you soon. Okay, if you want that document which I have shared, the my email is in the chat, or I can put it up again if you do and make another screenshot of my email address or go onto my website, and then I will send it to you. And if you are interested in, you might be interested in getting the book, and maybe there are other seminars where we can meet again, even if we don't meet really. Good. Thank you very much for joining, everyone. And let's carry on practicing pranayama and our yoga. Om Shanti.